I've been pretty dead lately. Sure, I've got projects in the works, but nothing's really captured my passion. Oh, hey, Pro Jared just released his review of Final Fantasy IV. That's my favorite one. Wonder what he... Huh? What's this?
This is just me laying down some criticism and opening up the door for discussion.
You opened the door. Now have a seat, and let's chat. Hey there, Gregor Eblan back with another commentary. Today we're looking at the video Pro Jared Doesn't Understand Final Fantasy IV by TheHyruleBard, or as I'll be calling him, Dustin. Yes, I'm hitting another video by Dustin, this time on his main account. His video is a response to Pro Jared's review of Final Fantasy IV. A few things before we get started. Dustin has since taken the video down, and prior to that has made it clear he will not watch this video, which leads to the question, why am I doing this? Well, even if Dustin does not or cannot see the flaws in the video, I do. And even if he is unwilling to hear me out, I can still share them with you, my viewers, so you can avoid making the same mistakes. That being said, do not go and be a dick to him. That is not something I support or want. Now as for me, once again, I'm Gregor Eblan, so I wear my love for Final Fantasy IV on my username. It was the first Final Fantasy game I beat. Not played, but beat. While Dustin is certainly entitled to his opinion on Pro Jared's review, there are issues to be had with some of the counterpoints he brought up. I'm going to skip over to 1 minute and 36 seconds in the video, as it's just him setting the groundwork for his video and his history with Final Fantasy IV. The only thing I can really comment on is the spoiler warning for the game, as it's over 25 years old at this point, and you can play it on your toaster if you wanted to. So giving a spoiler warning seems kind of silly, but that's a nitpick on my part. Also, I'm going to be fast forwarding almost every part as there's a lot of context needed, but I don't want to drag out the video too much.
Final Fantasy IV is one of the favorite entries by fans, and playing it again, well, I can see why. However, I also remember how ridiculous it was. It's got a lot of really weird plot moments in it, an abnormal amount of spoons.
So if you can't obviously tell, he's going to be reviewing the North American version of Final Fantasy IV, which is why he brought up the spoon joke. You're so fucking hilarious.
Do keep this in mind, it's going to bite Dustin in the ass repeatedly throughout the video. Jared is about Dustin and I's age, so he's looking at the game the way he would have first played it, and how most Americans would have played it, similar to how the great Clement is doing his reviews for the Final Fantasy games on his channel.
This game is fun to play. Compared to the 3 previous games, this is easily the most fun one. But it's also stupidly easy. Final Fantasy IV is a baby game for babies. The North American release was severely dumbed down. Like, super dumb. Like, Mystic Quest levels of dumb. For example, remember all those special character abilities? Like, half of them got removed because that's too complex. Cecil has 0 Dark Knight abilities, Rosa is missing her prey ability, Yong is missing both brace and focus abilities, and so on. Enemy attacks are so ineffective, almost every boss is a joke, and massive, devastating looking spells end up doing like no damage to you. On the bright note, this means absolutely no grinding is necessary since the game is so easy, so there's that.
Yes, Square dumbed down the game for Western audience. But this wasn't just exclusive to North America. In Japan, there was an easy version of Final Fantasy IV called Final Fantasy IV Easy Type.
Hold the fuck up, why are you bringing up Easy Type? A Japanese exclusive version of Final Fantasy IV. Like, I'm confused, are you trying to say its lack of challenge is not exclusive to America? Because if that's the case, you poorly worded it there, and it doesn't change the fact the original version of 4 would still be available in Japan, allowing consumers to have a choice, while here in North America we got the dumbed down version, and only that. Also, common consensus is that Easy Type is even easier than the North American version. Meaning if Jared thinks the North American version is too easy, he would hate Easy Type. One more thing, speed up your clips! Holy hell, this is a problem that plagues the video. You leave in so much of Jared's video that drags out your own. You're using an editor that supports multi-image layering, there's no excuse for not speeding up your clips. Now I'll be skipping the 4 minutes and 17 seconds, as what Dustin talks about next is censorship and cut content, which does not argue nor disprove Jared's point about the game being easy, and I will address later in the video as he brings it up a second time.
Oh, check it out, I got his wallet! Nice!
And yes, I will agree with you, it is dumbed down. However, this can be remedied with the Japanese version, because now there's an English patch available for it.
God damn it, Dustin, do you like your ass being bitten? So there's an English patch available for the Japanese original version of Final Fantasy IV on the Super Nintendo. Neat, cool, awesome. How does this invalidate the complaint that the North American version is too easy? Spoilers, it doesn't. Jared is looking at the North American version for his review, so saying, hey, this version fixes that, doesn't change the fact that the issue is still present in the version he is reviewing. Not to mention, he also points out that the easy difficulty is something exclusive to the SNES North American version as soon as you are done. So he is aware that the other versions exist, but he is specifically looking at the North American version for his review.
Now, to be clear, this is only the North American release that's like this. The Japanese original has the full experience and challenging gameplay. But with how easy the one we got is, I think it's one of the reasons that I didn't particularly enjoy playing it growing up. It's so mind-numbingly easy that it was like I barely had to play at all.
And I can understand your criticism of that. You were expecting a better challenge. But you gotta keep in mind that back then, JRPGs were not that popular. At least here in North America. So Square tried everything in their power to make Final Fantasy IV appealing. Keep in mind, not that many people knew about the other two Final Fantasy games. We were supposed to get them, but Nintendo of America was wanting to push more hardware for the Super Nintendo. So that's why Square decided to not release those two games and instead release Final Fantasy IV. And this is why they simplified the game, to make it seem more appealing and drive in more sales.
Cool history lesson, Dustin. One question. How does this counter what Jared was saying about the game being easy? Like, seriously? This history lesson doesn't do anything to even address Jared's complaint. Like, yeah, there's a reason we didn't get the original, but that doesn't change the fact that the version we got was easy. As for making the game more appealing, perhaps, but Square really tried that with Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, as it was created with the sole purpose of being an entry-level JRPG to appeal to the American and European audiences. Friendly reminder that Mystic Quest was the first Final Fantasy game that Europe got ever.
Now, I think it was a poor decision on Square's part. They should have kept the original content, as well as keep the difficulty. I'm just stating what is fact. Now, if I can play devil's advocate for just one moment here, I will state this, that Square probably didn't have a lot in saying what goes into their game. A lot of this had to do with localization, as well as Nintendo's heavily censorship that was going on.
Hold up. What do you mean Square had no control over localization? They hired their own translators. Sure, the script would have been changed to remove any Judeo-Christian references in the game, as was Nintendo's policy, but Square still would have had the final say in the localized script. That doesn't change the fact that the script was full of mistakes and archaic references. Spoony Bards, anyone? Also, Ted Woosley, the guy Square hired for their localization of Final Fantasy VI, which was called 3 in North America. He was responsible for taking Kefka and turning him into the iconic villain we know him as today. As in the Japanese release, he was a generic bad guy. Again, this shoots your argument that they had no control over their localization in the foot. I'm going to be skipping a bit here as there's only one more point I want to address in this section.
Oh, check it out! I got his wallet! Nice!
Where Final Fantasy II did really well, all things considered, so I don't really think the difficulty really mattered that much. At least back then.
It mattered to Jared. He straight up said earlier in the video that one of the reasons he did not enjoy the game as a child was because of how easy it was. You are correct, the game did well all things considered, but that doesn't change the fact that Jared felt the game was too easy.
You know that criticism some people have of Final Fantasy games where every battle is just mashing the A or the cross button until you win? This one was the true originator of that. But on the bright side, this does allow you to play another game at the same time.
Despite the difficulty being toned down, it's still the same game. You still have the ATB system. And not just that, you have to manage your items as well as your party members. So you can't just press the A button in order to beat the game. You have to use some careful planning and strategy.
Except that due to them reducing the game's difficulty, you rarely have to stop and heal your party, as enemies do paltry amounts of damage. And as for managing healing items, oof, should have left that out. In most Final Fantasies, there are specific items to heal specific status ailments. Soft for petrification, antidotes for poison, Maiden's Kiss for Toad, etc, etc. The North America version had one status healing item, the Heal Potion, which cured all status ailments, and this would be called Remedy in every other Final Fantasy. And unlike the other Final Fantasies, the Heal Potion was super common. Shops sold them for cheap, and you could find plenty throughout the dungeons in the game. If your party got an ailment, you used one healing potion and everything was good. That's not deep strategy, that's mind-numbing simplicity.
Especially in the first boss fight against the Mist Dragon. The Mist Dragon turns into mist every few turns, and if you hit it while it's in the mist form, it will strike back with a powerful counterattack. So you have to wait till it changes back in order to attack it. Sure, in some of the battles you can just press the A button and defeat every single enemy. However, when it comes to certain boss fights, you have to actually use strategy and careful move planning in order to beat the boss.
Yeah? Which bosses? Come on, Dustin, you know better than this, and you should have pointed out a few bosses, such as the optional summon boss Odin, who you have to kill quickly or he'll wipe your party with a one-hit KO, so spells like Slow and Haste are needed. Or the Fiend of Fire Rubicante, who is weak to ice, but if you attack him with ice while his cloak is closed, you'll heal him. Or the CPU in the Giant of Babel, who has 2 nodes with it. You need to destroy the defense node as it heals the CPU, but if you destroy both nodes, the CPU will revive them. So you need to leave the attack node alive while targeting the CPU. Those are just off the top of my head. It also doesn't change the fact that for most bosses, you can get away with brute forcing through them.
This is one of the most important factors of Final Fantasy IV. For a lot of people, this was their first foray into engaging emotional stories. And the story is... it's really stupid. I know, it was revolutionary and memorable and all that, but the story is dumb. I don't mean dumb as in ridiculous, I mean dumb as in a lot of the events are forced and don't have impact, and the characters don't get a whole lot of development.
It's at this point that Jared is being indecisive, because early on he said this.
We were able to connect with and finally remember the characters of this game because this is the most defined they have ever been. There's so much drama, plot twists, surprises, deaths, betrayals, all adding layer upon layer into an experience that was groundbreaking for its time.
Now, you could have said that you're mixed about the story rather than going on this whole sprawl about how groundbreaking this game is, yet then you go on to say that it's stupid, and that it feels forced, and it has no impact, and that the characters don't receive any development.
How is he being indecisive? He points out that Final Fantasy IV was one of the first games to have an in-depth plot. That was groundbreaking for the time, but the story itself was stupid. You're making a call to hypocrisy that doesn't exist. Just because it was groundbreaking in terms of its story and plot doesn't mean it did it well. Just because it was the first to do something doesn't mean it was good in its execution. He's not being indecisive, and moreover, he's not being hypocritical, which you're calling him out on. Go sit in the corner and think about what you've done.
It's totally not true, because there is plenty of character development in Final Fantasy IV. Hell, you even go on to give some examples of character development, which pretty much contradicts everything you said.
The only example he brings up in a non-joking manner is Cecil's redemption from a Dark Knight to a Paladin. The others, being Rydia and Edward, he does so in a joking manner to point out how rushed and forced they are. Thought I told you to go sit in the corner.
You said. And the reason why people love Final Fantasy IV is not just because the game is so groundbreaking. No, that has nothing to do with it. The reason why people love Final Fantasy IV is because it's a good game. Because people care about the characters. People care about the story. You could say it's stupid as much as you want, but that doesn't change the fact that this game is still loved and adored, even to this day. And to many people, it's considered their favorite Final Fantasy game.
Hey, no forcing words into Jared's mouth. You need a safe word for that kind of shit, and also fucking consent. This whole section is you implying that Jared doesn't like Final Fantasy IV when, spoilers, he does. He just finds flaws in the story and the character development. If you keep trying to force feed him words, I'm calling the police.
Oh, check it out! I got his wallet! Nice!
Now there are good moments. For example, Rydia, easily my favorite character in the game, has her mother killed and village burned to the ground by an unwilling Cecil, who then feels extreme guilt. Horrified by the blaze, Rydia, a powerful black mage, refuses to use any fire spell. And their way up a mountain is blocked by a wall of ice, and they ask Rydia to melt it with fire, even though she hates that magic. But thanks to long self-reflection of what it truly means to be a force for good, discovering forgiveness and compassion within herself and her new friends, her journey allows her to slowly overcome a traumatic experience that has haunted her for— Man, I'm just kidding, she gets over it thanks to peer pressure.
No, Rydia is not a black mage, she is a summoner. A summoner is a class that is known for their ability to summon magical beasts to fight for the party. Yes, Rydia can cast black magic or white magic spells, but she just so happens to be more of a powerful black magic user. But at the same time, her black magic can only do so much. It's her summoning abilities that makes her a force to be reckoned with. So yeah, she's a summoner, not a black mage. I get that you were joking about how Rydia overcomes her fear of using fire, but the way you explained it, there's some misconception. First of all, she does not hate using the spell. She's afraid to use the spell because of what happened at Mist, and she overcomes it through encouragement by Edward and Rosa, and she realizes that more lives would be lost if she didn't act fast. So that's the reason why she overcome her fear of casting the fire spell. And also, what was that you said earlier about the characters not receiving much development?
Oof, there's a lot to go over here. Let's go. First, holy fuck, are you really getting on to him for calling Rydia a black mage? That is the most nitpicky nitpick of nitpickerton. And it's still wrong. Jesus Christ, yes, she can summon Eidolons, but when you first get her as a child, she's a hybrid between a red mage and a summoner, as she can cast white and black magic, albeit not very well, and summon. And as a child, her only summon is Chocobo, which can only hit one target, so most people are going to ignore her summon and use it for her black magic. When she rejoins the party as an adult, she loses access to her white magic, but her black magic and summons are boosted, making her a hybrid with black mage and summoner. However, since summons take more time to cast and have longer animations, they can drag out battles, so most people would focus on using her black magic, as it is quicker and just effective as her summons. Also, Jared himself acknowledges that Rydia is a black mage and summoner near the start of his video.
Rydia is both a black mage and a summoner.
Now onto that point about Rydia hating fire. Dustin, holy shit, how did you miss this? It's in your own video. Hold on, I need to get someone else to make sure my eye isn't going bad. Hey, Sugar Butt!
What do you want now, Gregor? Don't you bother me enough as is. I swear, if it's another you want to attack the objective joke again, I am going to take you and throw you off.
No, nothing like that. I just want you to read this screenshot right here.
What, this? Okay. Redia says, I hate fire.
Oh, so I'm not going blind. Rydia straight up says she hates fire. Kinda shoots your entire argument about her not hating fire in the foot, doesn't it?
Wait, hold on a second, Dustin. So, a character says they hate a thing, but then you're saying that they don't, but your video shows that they do say it and they do hate it, but you are... Wait,
Oh, you made my sugar butt explode. Well, the more I say that out loud, the more wrong it sounds. But thanks, Dustin. I appreciate that. That's top quality. And on to your last point about it not being peer pressure. You straight up said she was encouraged by Edward and Rosa to cast fire. It's just positive peer pressure instead of negative. So you're basically agreeing with Jared that it's peer pressure. Fucking great.
There's a great part where they meet Edward the Bard. Yep, you Spoony Bard, aha memes. Who is actually a prince, and his home was besieged by the Red Wings. His girlfriend, Anna, who is also Sage Tella's daughter, protected him from an onslaught of arrows and dies. This sends Tella into a rage, and Edward starts mourning, barely able to stand from seeing his home and his lover fall. And then an 8-year-old Rydia waltzes right up to him and says, "Get over it, bitch!" So he does. Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong.
No, it wasn't Rydia that made Edward decide to join the party. It was Cecil. Cecil was the one that slapped Edward across the face and demanded for his help, so that way they can get the Sand Pearl and cure Rosa's desert fever. Also, it's after Anna's ghost appears in front of Edward, she tells him to believe in himself and to be strong for her. Thus, he officially joins the group. And it's throughout the rest of the game that Edward develops and becomes more courageous and brave, because he wants to be a protector for his friends, and he doesn't want them to turn out to be casualties like his parents and the woman he loved.
So, Cecil physically abused Edward to join the party. I mean, you're right, for once, but I'm not sure that's much better than an 8-year-old calling him a crybaby, but what the fuck ever. As for Edward becoming more courageous, if that's the case, the game does a garbage job of showing it. He still auto-hides if his health is too low, and his high command is still an option. This is also one of the last major scenes with Edward as a focal point, apart from him playing his harp to help the party against the Dark Elf, and there isn't a lot of development from him after this scene, which plays into Jared's complaint about the characters not having any real development.
Cecil begins as a Dark Knight, but as a means to shed himself of his guilt and dark tendencies, he climbs his way up Mount Ordeals and undergoes a powerful sequence in which he gets up the Dark Sword and becomes a paladin. This is one of the best moments in the whole game and gives great character development to Cecil. This also happens 1/5 into the game, and all the development stops right here. After this, there's nothing more for him. Lots of things happen to the people around him or those important to him, but not to Cecil himself.
What are you talking about? Cecil's development is the central theme for Final Fantasy IV, which is redemption and forgiveness. Here you have a man who is suffering with guilt and darkness that he forces to hold inside of him. It's throughout the game that Cecil struggles with his sense of identity and morality. He comes to hate himself for being loyal to the king and following his orders to the detriment of others, and promptly losing his sense of self. Thus, he decides to take the path of becoming a paladin, as a means to atone for his sin and find redemption. It's after the battle with Dark Cecil that the game tells you that justice is not the only right in this world. Someday, you will see. Thus, Cecil understands the most important thing is to have forgiveness, not just for his own wrong actions, but for others as well. Thus, Cecil forgives Kain's betrayals, and he forgives the final boss. And you say that Cecil doesn't develop after becoming a paladin, which you're wrong, because it is throughout the game that Cecil learns the only way to truly overcome darkness is to understand and learn to forgive, and to help others find their own redemption. This is Cecil's development, and it comes to show you that it's not just all about developing characters, rather it's important to tell a good story and give a clear message.
Jesus Christ, here we go again. What development does Cecil have after the Paladin sequence? You say he forgives the final boss, but I believe you misspoke and meant he forgives Golbez, who was set up as the big bad throughout most of the game and revealed to be Cecil's brother, but that's at the very end of the game. You can chalk forgiving Kain up to Kain being Cecil's best friend and his actions not being his own as he was mind controlled. As for Cecil becoming a paladin, what choice did he have in the matter? After leaving Falbul and the ship being attacked by Leviathan, he awakens on the shore of Mysidia alone. When he speaks to the Elder of Mysidia, he is told he must climb Mount Ordeals to become a paladin before the Elder will allow him to use the Devil's Road to return to Baron. Cecil had no choice. He had to become a paladin in order to return to Baron to get an airship that would allow him to save Rosa, who was kidnapped by Golbez, which occurred during the siege of Falbul. Your entire interjection does nothing to disprove Jared's point about Cecil's development stopping after he becomes a paladin.
The original translation job is also really sloppy. There's the usual censorship, but then there's also stuff like Yang here, who gets ready to attack and screams, "Achoo!" Or when you defeat the CPU core and Kain says, "We did it!" Kain is nowhere in the party.
Again, this problem can be remedied. Not only do you have the English fan translation, which, in my opinion, I think it's the most accurate to the original script.
God damn, sounds like you need a fan patch there, Dustin. Also, I'm going to be stopping you right there, as the other versions nor the fan patch debunk the fact that the Super NES translation was garbled at some points. Skip?
Oh, check it out, I got his wallet! Nice!
Game's plot is that everything is a fake out. They overuse that plot device so much it loses all impact and meaning very early on in the game. Kane is the first party member you ever get to join here, but he betrays you! Twice. But just kidding, he was actually mind controlled.
This is obviously not a fake out. This is more of a metamorphosis for Kane's development. You know, the very thing that you claim is lacking in this game. Also, it's at the very end of the game where Cecil and Rosa get married that you notice that Kane doesn't attend the wedding. And the reason why that is because he felt guilty for his actions. And it's at that point that Kane feels the same way that Cecil felt at the very beginning of the game.
Couple of things. One, how does this debunk the fact that Kane being mind controlled was overused in Jared's eyes? And two, what development does Kane go through before the end of the game? Yeah, he feels guilty at the end of the game, but throughout the rest of the game, he doesn't really go through any development. He's still the same character from when you get him in Baron to when you defeat Zero Mist.
And then Yang falls off the boat and then he fights you, but he's mind controlled. And then to stop super cannons from firing, he explodes himself or something. When it happens here, dude, we have magic, just do it. Anyway, Yang dies in a stupid explosion for no reason, but just kidding, he's actually fine.
No, he wasn't mind controlled. He was suffering with a case of amnesia, which led him to becoming an officer, ordered to find Cecil, and that was the reason why he attacked them. And as for Yang's sacrifice, the super cannon was getting ready to activate, so Yang decided to sacrifice himself, which the cannon explodes. They thought he was dead, but of course, as it turns out, he was protected by the Sliffs, so that's how he survived.
Palom and Porum turned themselves to stone, stopped walls from closing in, and sacrificed themselves. Oh, just kidding, they're fine!
Palom and Porum didn't actually die. They petrified themselves on their own will, thus they couldn't be healed by normal means. The only person that was able to heal them was the Elder. Regardless of what anybody thinks about the sacrifice of Palom and Porum, this was one of those moments that actually had me in tears because I really cared about these characters, and they're so adorable and endearing. So why wouldn't you care that they sacrifice themselves, you heartless soul?
Alright, there's a bit to cover here. First, let's start with Yang. While you are correct he is suffering from amnesia, he is convinced into thinking Cecil is his enemy in a manner similar to Kane's brainwashing. So this comes off as a bit of a nitpick, as he might as well have been brainwashed. As for Yang and Palom and Porum's deaths, just because there's a reason they survived doesn't mean Jared can't like how overdone the trope was. Also, you cut out Jared talking about Sid's death, which had no explanation on how he survived, jumping off his airship and blowing the hell up. God damn, Jared doesn't even go over all the examples of this, as both Rydia and Edward have these fake out moments too. Rydia is presumed dead after she falls into the water when Leviathan attacks the boat, and when you get Yang back, he says that she was swallowed by Leviathan. She then reappears in her adult form during your fight against Golbez in the underworld. Edward is also presumed dead after the Leviathan attack until you find him in Troya. Hell, Yang gets 2 of these fake out deaths. Once when he jumps off a ship after Rydia, and again at the super cannon. In total, 6 characters have 7 fake deaths. Kane is mind controlled twice, and the only death that stuck throughout the game was Tellus. Hell, I love Final Fantasy IV, and even I think they overdid with this trope.
Golbez is the biggest, evilest guy you gotta stop, but fake out, he's being mind controlled! And he's Cecil's brother because what a twist!
Now keep in mind, he is reviewing Final Fantasy IV's North American release.
Stop. You're going to bring up how Golbez's backstory is fleshed out in the other versions of the game, but this does not counter his argument of the trope being overused in the North American Super Nintendo version. I'm almost done, I just got one final thing to address.
Oh, check it out, I got his wallet! Nice!
And I know a lot of you may defend him by saying that he's only reviewing the North American release. He's not reviewing the original Final Fantasy IV. My counter argument to that would be, look at his video title. His video title specifically says Final Fantasy IV. I mean, if he's reviewing the North American Super Nintendo release, then why isn't the video called Final Fantasy II?
Oh, I don't know, Dustin. Perhaps it's because Jared already did a review of the actual Final Fantasy II. Also, when this game was ported to the PlayStation 1, the Game Boy Advance, and the PSP, it was formerly called Final Fantasy IV. When this game got remade for the DS and eventually mobile and Steam, it was called Final Fantasy IV. And having 2 videos with the same title could confuse the audience. Your criticism here is garbage and it's invalid, and you're asking for the repeat of the decades of confusion with this point. We're done here. The rest of the video is Dustin giving his recommendations on which version to play, so on to final thoughts. Dustin, this video was a train wreck. I know you said you won't watch my commentary on it, but in the slightest chance you do, let me tell you all the things I found wrong. You constantly try to use other versions of the game to debunk Jared, but that's not how this works. Like at all. Just because other versions don't have the issues doesn't mean that the problems Jared found in the North American Super Nintendo version magically go away. You try to debunk subjective feelings with facts instead of using those facts to show why the reasons behind those feelings were flawed, and I understand that because you got somewhat negative feedback on your video, you're considering not doing response to any videos, and while I can't stop you from making that choice, I disagree with it. By doing so, you are shutting yourself out of the very discussion you wanted. My advice is to take a bit more time in doing these. these, actually counter the issues being discussed in the version being discussed, and not be so emotionally vested, as this really came off as fanboy whining at the end of the day. However, as Final Fantasy IV fans, I think we can all come together and agree on one thing.
And Edward, the Bard, can get the f out of my party.
I'm Gregor Eblan. I'll see you all next time. Hey, another commentary's out. Huzzah! And with that, I got some fan art to feature for you today. Today we have this cutie version of Gregor done by the amazing Blazing Hope, also known as Tippy. I want a plush of this so bad. And as an added bonus, we have the OTP of Gregor X Cosmo, done by Cosmo Queen. This is such a great piece, and I want to thank both Tippy and Cosmo for doing these for me. You guys are the best.